Morning. Welcome to today's edition of Business Morning. We're live to you on Channels Television from the venue of the 2016 Nigeria Economic Summit that is focusing on Made in Nigeria. Of course, you know the campaign has been on for quite some time, even though a lot of people have had mixed feelings with regards if they use Made in Nigeria products or not. Of course, day one of the summit saw focused conversations on what the policies, the regulatory framework, and even legal actions need to be taken at this time to make sure that they not only, that's the manufacturers are not only supported, but also support your vision, your view about what Made in Nigeria products really are all about. But my name is Harriet Agbenyi. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the program. Right about now, one of the 7 plenary sessions that have been put together for this particular summit is on, and that is a round table with the Vice President on job creation, skills and employment. Of course, a lot has to be talked about. If you really want to start making good products here in Nigeria, you have to be competitive, and the only way to be competitive is to boost your skills gap. That's one of the major issues that has been highlighted, apart from the infrastructure and funding challenges that needs to be addressed for you to have competitive products that you can use domestically and of course export. That was part of what actually formed part of the conversations yesterday, and that's what's actually ongoing right now. We've got the governor of Ogun State, Mr. Ibikunle Amosun, the governor of Anambra State, Willie Obiano, and the President of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, as well as Chief Executive Officer of General Electric Africa, Jay Ireland, on that particular roundtable discussion with the Vice President. It's a very interesting one, and of course we've got tabs on it for you. So the Vice President there, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, of course responding to some of the issues that have been raised at that ongoing panel. Channels Television also has tabs on it for you, and we'll bring you updates with regards what the Vice President says as we go. Of course, joining me now on the program so that we can, kick off this conversation, even though we know that the conversation is already in full gear on social media. That's on Twitter, on Facebook, even on YouTube. The conversation is all about Made in Nigeria. What really is different about what this team is all about this year? Joining me to shed more light on this is the Chairman, Central Organizing Committee of the Nigeria Economic Summit, the 22nd Nigeria Economic Summit, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Dr. Adedipe is also an economist. A good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Good morning, Harriet, and thanks for having me.
So it's a special edition. Why? Because it's come at a time when there's conversation so much about Nigeria being in recession, and a number of times we've had conversation. You've actually, alluded to the fact that if, for instance, we begin to look inward, then maybe we can, get past where we are at the moment. Is that the rationale for putting together this particular summit with this theme?
Thank you so very much for that. And I will say precisely that is the rationale for it. Now, looking historically to what has happened to our economy in the last 15, 16 years, the economy has grown quite robustly, but we also discovered that we have not grown inclusively, meaning simply that we're growing, yes, but we're not creating jobs. So growth numbers, macroeconomic statistics, looking very fine, but the development indices were dismal. So, and after we dimension all these and our experiences at the annual summit and the post-summit activities of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, we then sat back and said, can we change the game and begin to see real gains where we create jobs, and of course within a context where wealth can also be created. So we found very importantly here that yes, Nigeria, we are a consuming nation, but we don't produce much of what we consume. And of course, tied to that is the fact that productivity is also very low. So we now said there are 2 options for us in terms of this year's summit. We can either look at Make in Nigeria, which considers that you produce here for the rest of the world and for Nigeria. Then the other side of it we said is Made in Nigeria, which looks now at consumption. and says, can we begin to deliberately consume what we produce here? So eventually we adopted the theme Made in Nigeria because we realized that it can address both sides to the economic activities, three sides to economic activities really: production, consumption, and then the exchange. So we said if we adopt Made in Nigeria, then we can address the twin major issues in economics, and that is production and consumption. So if we align those two for Nigeria, then we can begin to find a roadmap out of where we are currently.
Dr. Adigwe, you will agree with me that despite the recession, consumption patterns and consumption levels have not reduced. It seems as if it's almost tripled. But you see, the only way for you to address those is for you to have a production level, which is what you've actually mentioned.
That's right.
To attain that production level and to attain growth, what do you make, or what do you think should be done in terms of policies, regulation, and of course the legal framework that is needed to actually, push this forward?
Now, that's an interesting issue you raised because it connects between the economic summit we had last year, that is Next 21, and then the current one, Next 22. Now, between the last summit and this one, a lot of things have happened in this regard with respect to policies, programs, and then projects, because that's the way it cascades. So, and I can mention very quickly here three things that happened between the last summit and this one relating to what you raised. Now, the first one is what the Vice President is in session currently on, and that is job creation. Now, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group has actually worked with the Vice President's office with respect to the job creation unit that is domiciled in the VP's office. And a lot of work has been done there, designing the framework for how to get that done, which of course are the issues being discussed at the present moment. Then, of course, in terms of policies and regulatory environment, the NESG also has engaged with the National Assembly, and quite a lot of work has been done. There's a lot still ongoing, and I can make a reference here to the railway bill. We've had a major input in that evolved from the last summit. So as an outcome of that, and currently as well, I mean, you know quite well that the Ease of Doing Business Committee has been launched as well. That is one of the resolutions of the Next 21. So actually there's a whole lot happening. But what we now intend to achieve with this year's summit is to put everything together and in perspective. So we have a broad framework for a national development plan.
So, Dr. Adigwe, putting together a very broad framework also has to look at the ease of doing business, in terms of access to finance, which is one of the major challenges.
That's right.
Infrastructure, which is another major challenge.
Great.
So creating a conducive environment for you to do business is very important.
That's right.
So let's talk about funding, for instance. If you want to access funds, you want to get very cheap loans, for instance, but you still have to, you still battle the issue of high interest rates. At this summit, what are the things that you think they should be talking about, or what do you hope that coming out from this summit will be part of what will form the communique that will be sent to the executive's office with regards ease of getting, funds to do business at conducive interest rates?
It's also, I will say, one of the conversations that have already started as we talk. Now, there are different strategies to getting funding for projects and also for programs. But most importantly, as we discussed at day one of Next 22, first is the power of the ideas. Now, if you have ideas that are very clear and also well sequenced, in which case it is bankable, as we call it. Once you have project ideas that are bankable, the money is available. Like it was shared here with us yesterday, several trillions of dollars all around the world looking for where to go. So in which case we recognize that we are competing with other nations of the world for these funds. So what we are looking at now is to improve the ease of doing business. And of course, yesterday we had the Vice President address that in the policy dialogue, okay, where we talked about what are the specific things that we want to make easy. Business registration. We talked, of course, about one-stop shop and then making ministry departments and agencies of government to work together. Take, for example,
Sorry to cut you here, Dr. Adedipe. We'll come back and finish this conversation. We'll just quickly take a quick break on the program. You're watching Business Morning. It's a special edition of the program. We're coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. And the focus is on Made in Nigeria. We'll be right back.